I used to have a little game when I was single where I'd talk to girls and be like, if we were like making out or something, I'd be like, I can't invite you back to my place because I sleep in a dog bed. And they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? And a couple times it would lead to the girl being like, well, I got to see this dog bed. And then they'd come home with me.
And it was like dog bed.
Cute and charming. And then, but then the next morning they'd be like, fuck this, you loser. Get a bed, you loser.
What's going on, good people? Welcome back to Public Property with me, your host, Monroe Martin. Yo, this is a really good episode. I got the very funny, very talented, I think he's a movie star. I don't think he would call himself a movie star, but I think he's a movie star because he's been in a lot of movies. I have Chris Gethard on this motherfucker. All right? We have a really fun conversation. We're playing Pac-Man. He's not really a gamer, but we had a good time just shooting shit, playing old school video games, and talking about our childhood trauma. But before we get into this episode, I need you to make sure that you like, share, subscribe, join that Patreon. And if for some reason you can't join the Patreon, then please make sure that you buy one of our merches to support the podcast. We got everything from hoodies to t-shirts to, I believe we got stickers and mugs and cups. We got everything you need, baby. All right, let's get into it.
There's a whole generation of Philly comedians that when they meet me, they're like, I used to do shows with your brother. And they always say it like that. Yeah. Because my brother used to do a lot of really weird shit. And he's a funny dude. But he dressing up as a wizard on stage, pretending to be a motivational speaker. And all these people who came out of Philly are like, I used to do shows with your brother. It was wild. Like, I get that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, look, he did what he had to do.
Yeah, funny dude. He was always always out there trying to cause trouble.
But he quit?
No, he still does. He's just never wanted to do it professionally. So he'll like get inspired, go hit up a bunch of shows for a few months when he has some ideas. And then if he feels like living a real life for a while instead, he'll just fade out and do that. And there's a part of me that's kind of jealous of that, of like, oh, you get to do it when you're inspired. And then you could take your foot off the gas and you don't feel pressure.
Yeah, I don't know.
So it kind of comes in and out.
I don't like that. Nah, you gotta be all in or nothing, yo.
I hear you. Yeah, but some would say that we're the more damaged ones for having that.
I don't believe them. I look. There's some times where I don't feel like doing shit. I'm depressed and everything. And the moment I hit that stage, sometimes I don't even talk about what's bothering me. I'll talk about something else, and I feel like my spirits have been lifted. This shit is like magical. I love doing
I will say, there are times where I do a set where I go, that's the only 15 minutes this week where I felt good. Yeah. Like, it's still 20 something years of doing this where I'll go, that 15 minutes right there is the only time I felt like my head was totally clear. Yeah. So I still am addicted to it and need it, but trying to sort out that relationship with it. But yeah, the times where I go, that's the only time I felt any sense of agency or strength or confidence this whole week was that 15 minutes on stage.
Now, how do you explain that to your kid?
I think hard about it. Well, it's weird too, because he's 4 now, and like I see little things where like he gets overly emotional about certain things where I go, ooh, he got that from me. Or like he has these little anxieties where I'm just like, why did he got that from me? And it kills me because I see, just to be totally frank, I like see some of my weirdness or like some of my fucked up parts. He's a good kid, and I feel like he's got a better shot than I do in a lot of ways because I'm so aware of what's going on. But like little things where he'll get like scared and say like, oh, I'm scared of heights. And I'm like, you're not even that. You're standing on a rock that's 3 feet. You could jump off it and be safe. And he's like, Daddy, get me down, get me down, get me down. I'm like, oh, that's me. That's my anxiety showing up in my son. I hate that feeling.
But how do you get him through that? Do you make him jump or do you just get him down?
It depends case by case. Like, I think he feels good when he jumps, but I'm never going to be like, you just jump, be tough, son. Like that. I don't have that in me. I don't think that's productive. I got a little bit of that. I think I've also seen moments where he does figure that out on his own and he's very proud of himself. But I try not. It's weird. It's very weird right now to be part of this. I feel like a lot of dads I talk to who became dads around the same time I did, it's like, all right, like our parents did a pretty good job, but there's a whole lot of nonsense that I think we'd all like to move on from, of like trying to force them to be obsessed with being tough and like boys don't ever cry and all that stuff. Where I'm like, cry if you need to cry, like go off in the corner and be sad for a while and then come back and we'll talk about it and we'll figure out if it got you anything or if it was productive or if there could have maybe been a better way than crying. But like this whole idea of like, suck it up. Boys never feel pain and never show weakness. I'm like, I have no interest in raising them like that. So, but there's not really, I don't really know anything else because my dad he's a great guy and he was a great dad, but like his generation, he certainly was a guy that was like, stop fucking whining, you know, like there was a lot.
They didn't have none of that. They had zero answers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A friend of mine described it to me. He was like, man, that whole generation, they didn't have therapy or YouTube. And it made me laugh so hard because I'm like, yes, it's within my lifetime that men are allowed to talk about going to therapy. That's huge. But also, so much of parenting is just YouTube videos. Like, how do I put together this crib? YouTube video. How do I sanitize a bottle without melting it when I'm boiling it? YouTube video. And it's just like they didn't have any of that. They just were.
They all of it was Nana. They had
word of mouth stuff, I guess. Like what? How did you? You must have felt so tired all the time. So yeah.
I mean, that's if they were taking care of you. If they weren't taking care of you, they was energetic. Yeah, if they cared, then they were tired. If they didn't give a shit, they had all the energy in the world.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure. They were all just like workaholics with chips on their shoulders.
Dude, I wish my parents were like that. I always tell people, well, I don't have a relationship with my dad. I have a relationship with my mom, and I didn't live with my mom. I only seen her on the weekends. But looking back, I feel like her only goal in life with us was, she was like, I just want them to like me like a friend. Like, she didn't know how to parent. Like, my mom's a great parent now. It's kind of sometimes I get jealous and sometimes I'm like, whatever, because she takes care of, like, she's so caring now. Like, she takes care of other people's kids. Like, the building that she lives in, she cooks for people. She'll bring them plates. And I'm like, where the fuck was that when I was young?
Dude, I remember very distinctly one of the first times my parents visited us after my son was born, and my son was in the little swing chair thing.
Yeah.
And I came out of the bathroom and my dad was on the floor in front of it, rolling around, making these little like, woo, coo, coo, like baby noises, trying to get my son. And I was like, who the fuck is this man? Who the fuck is this man? Like, I've had and again, my dad never hit us, and he was great. He was a great dad, but like, he was always tired, and I just always remember until I was in my 20s, my sense of my dad was like, he's a good guy, but like, I don't want to set him off. He's tired. And I've had I've had multiple friends of mine as a grown up say that they remember meeting my dad. I've had 3 different friends tell me some version of like, I remember as soon as I met your dad, I was like, this seems like a fundamentally good dude. And I do not want him pissed at me ever. I don't ever want this man pissed off. Like, before he said a word. But isn't that like the
essence of a man, though? Like, growing up, that was like the essence of a man. Like, men didn't have to say much. Like,
he didn't say a word, and my friends were like, I don't ever want to cross this fucking dude. And he hadn't said anything. He just gave off this energy of like, don't fuck with me. And my dad's also big. I'm a little guy. I'm 5'7". My dad's 6'2", 220. Like, he's big. I look like my mom. So he's like this big. I remember one friend of mine who was kind of a troublemaker, good guy, but like just kind of he had a reputation around town as a troublemaker. He was like, I remember the first time I met your dad, he stood up out of his armchair and shook my hand. And he goes, I remember thinking, oh, he's giving me the man handshake.
Yeah.
Like, he's sending a message. He's sending a message with the first handshake.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just me. Like, that was my dad's vibe, and I've had that verified by other people.
All right, so hold on. My first question is, now that we're talking about disciplining, who disciplined you and how were you disciplined? Did you get your ass beat? Was it like they talked to you, or did they just kind of let things slide?
No, it was a middle ground. I never got hit, and I'm lucky on that. Kids in my neighborhood certainly were getting hit. My parents were ahead of the curve on that. I will tell you, I was raised very Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
Like grandparents lived across the street, aunt around the corner, other grandparents 2 blocks away, other aunt around the other corner, cousins in the neighborhood, like really classic Irish Catholic style.
Yeah.
And anybody who knows the Irish Catholics, I was raised through guilt. Everything was guilt. Everything was, and a lot of it was my mom saying things, I thought I was raising a better person than this. Or what kind of man says that? Like things like that. Like just a lot of guilt. And then I also feel bad because for as much as I'm talking about my dad's vibe, my mom also, she boogeymaned him. There was a lot of if I was talking back or pushing back against her and she couldn't get me to shut up or be good, there's a lot of like, okay, I guess I'll just call your father at work and then when he gets home, he'll deal with it. And me just being like, oh no. Yeah. And sometimes where she would pick up the phone and call him right in front of me and I'd be like, the one thing I know about my dad is don't fucking interrupt him at work.
Yeah.
And he's getting a call about me now. This is bad. And now I look back too and realize there was some of that. Well, when your father gets home, he'll deal with it. And I realized now looking back where she hadn't called him, where she was bluffing. And then he comes home and I'm scared shitless. And I'm kind of like, yeah. And he wants to just like connect with his son. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go play Nintendo in the basement because I'm waiting to get yelled at. And he's like, why is everyone walking on fucking eggshells? Where I go, some of that wasn't fair to him either. Yeah. But it was a lot of guilt and just a lot of, just a lot of that Catholic guilt, a lot of that just, I thought you were better than this. I didn't realize you were that kind of person like that. Like things like that. Me just holding that all day.
Damn. I mean, that's some psychological warfare shit.
Oh, my mom was great at that.
Yeah. Is your family superstitious?
A little bit. Yeah. There's some, again, tying into the Irish Catholic stuff. There's, dude, it's funny you should even ask this because there was always a little stuff with my grandma kind of being a, like I once had a cousin, he lived in California and she was really superstitious with the Catholic stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember once he was visiting and he drove a motorcycle and shit. He was badass. He used to smoke cigarettes and she just walked up to him out of the blue one day and she threw a bunch of water on him.
Holy water.
He was like, what's that? And she's like, it's holy water. You need it. And we were all like, what is that? And then he died like 3 months later in a motorcycle accident. So there's like weird shit like that. And then, dude, so my son, I know. So when my grandma immigrated from Ireland, she moved to Brooklyn and I found out what block it was.
Okay.
And we happened to be in Brooklyn visiting friends the other week. This was about, 3 weeks ago. And we happened to park on this block where as we parked on it, I go, oh, this is the block my grandmother moved on when she moved to America. And we're in the car and my 4-year-old son just really quietly out of nowhere, he just goes, I've been here before. Oh. And I was like, what? And he's like, I've been here before. And I was like, no, you haven't. He's like, I have been. And then just like 4 days ago, no joke, I took him to get pizza in my old hometown. And we drove past this park and he looks at it and he goes, I've played at that playground. And I was like, no, you haven't. Like, I grew up in this town. I know you haven't played in this playground. And he goes, I have. It was a long time ago. And I called my mom. I was like, didn't you used to play in the Lafayette playground when you were a kid? And she was like, yeah, all the time. I go, well, my son recognized it and said he used to play there a long time ago. So there's some weird shit like that.
But I believe in that type of stuff, though. I believe that we just recycle life, right? Meaning, like, if you feel like like that sense of deja vu and stuff is kind of like the present and the past life coming together.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you may have not experienced that exact thing, but you experienced something like it, and the universe is like lining up, and you realize in that moment. I don't know if that's crazy, if that's like crazy talk, but I got that from living with like old people. Old people, whenever I would say that, they'd be like, wisdom comes from, uh, like natural wisdom just comes from just us being on this earth, like forever, basically. Like, even though I was a kid, my spirit and has been here forever.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
it's funny. That same grandma with the block, when she died,
Mm-hmm.
my then baby cousin, they once happened to be driving past the graveyard where she
I
was
don't want.
buried,
Yeah.
and my little cousin was like 2 years old and started giggling.
Yeah.
And my aunt in the front seat was like, "What are you laughing at?" And she just goes, "Oh, Nanny said something really funny." And it was while they
Mm.
were driving past the graveyard where she was buried. So
Nah,
there's some old,
that's just craziness.
yeah, there's some old Celtic nonsense in my Irish Catholic family.
Yeah, no, if a kid start telling me they see ghosts, I'm immediately getting help.
Kids are like the scariest creatures in the world in some ways.
Yeah, nah, that's why when I get my own, somebody else gonna have to deal with it. If my kids start going, I'm talking to somebody who ain't there. I'm like, all right, we're gonna have to get help on this one. Wait,
Yeah.
were you made out of love, or were you made out of like, or were you made in the back seat of a car? Like, are you a hookup baby, or are you a out of love baby? You said
Uh,
Irish. You're Irish Catholic, so I don't know how that go.
they
Are
used
y'all
to crank them
fucking
out. They crank
yeah?
them out. Yeah, the Irish Catholics have lots. My family, we only had me and my brother, so that was
Mm-hmm.
small by our standards. People
Yeah.
around the block had 9 kids in one house. I think I was a love baby. To my knowledge, I was a planned love baby. I mean, my older brother was a couple years older than me, but my mom did just tell me I was a really bad kid.
Mm-hmm.
And they just told me there was a stretch where they thought they were pregnant after me.
Yeah.
And she went to the town pharmacy in our town and bought pregnancy tests. And the pharmacist was like, "Oh, good luck." And my mom goes, "Well, you'll know if I'm pregnant because I'll be the woman you read about who throws herself off the roof of her house."
God
She
damn,
didn't
you're
want
my
another kid
morbid
after.
as shit.
Yeah, after I was as bad as I was, she didn't want another kid to deal with.
God damn, I feel
Yeah,
like your mom is the problem.
my mom is the
I'm
best.
just,
She's funny as hell, but she can be a little bit dramatic at times for sure. She can be a little dramatic for sure.
Yo, what genre of music do you think you were conceived to?
Ooh, that's a good question. I know my mom loves Motown more than any other type of music, and my
Mm-hmm.
dad was like an old rock and roll guy. I was also psyched when I found my dad's record collection when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
He had like a bunch of cheesy shit, but then he also had Kraftwerk. He had the soundtrack to Shaft in there. I was like, you've got some
Oh,
weird,
your dad definitely was fucking the Shaft.
like you
That's
got
the
he.
perfect soundtrack.
Can you imagine though, like my
Yeah,
white dad in the '70s throwing on the Shaft soundtrack and
yeah.
seducing my mom? That's a really weird image for me.
Yo,
Really weird.
I can imagine it. Just doom, 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 doom.
It was a strange choice, unexpected choice. Mostly he had like Beatles and
Mm.
Rolling Stones and all that stuff, but then Kraftwerk and Shaft, I was like, maybe my dad's cooler than I thought.
I'm not sure what Kraftwerk is. What is that? Is that
Kraftwerk's
a
this
band?
German, they're this like German techno band from the '70s, and a lot of like the early hip hop like Park Jam DJs loved Kraftwerk, like Cool Herc and those
Mm-hmm.
guys were like real into sampling Kraftwerk. So there's a lot of Kraftwerk samples all over early hip hop. So that's why I
Mm.
thought it was weird that my dad was into this strange German techno band that kind of had this hipster credibility.
Oh wow,
Um,
I gotta check them out. Were you
yeah,
allowed to call your parents by their first name?
no way. How about
At,
how about you?
no, I wasn't. My sister did. My sister didn't give a fuck. Every boundary that I wouldn't cross, my sister, she did it. With you know what I mean? Like she didn't
Yeah,
care.
yeah,
She was like a daredevil. She actually used to call my mom by her nickname, which I think is the most disrespectful.
that's bold.
But
And how does
yeah,
it work with foster parents? Are there any of them who are like hoping you'll call them mom and dad, and you're like, no thanks, Frank? Like, is there some of
I
that?
had like one or two that would do it, but most of the time, I think I lived with like the foster parents who were like virtue signaling. So they took pride in being like, this is my foster kid. And I was embarrassed to even be called a foster kid, right? Because to me, that's like that stigma of like being unwanted and nobody really, like people feel sad for you when they be like, oh, you're a foster kid. Oh, I'm sorry. And it's like, all right, but you didn't have to know that off the bat.
Right.
But all my foster parents, they would do that. Like anywhere we go, we run into somebody and they're like, oh, who's this? I could have been they could have called me a nephew. They could have called me like a distant cousin, but they're like, oh, this is our foster kid. And then they would just tell the business, oh, his mom's on drugs, his dad's in jail, and this, that, and the third. I'm like, God
just airing it
damn.
Out.
Yeah.
Airing it out.
That kind of taught me to just fucking own whatever shit that you're ashamed of. Right? Like if you're like holding these secrets and like that gives people power over you. I didn't like that. I didn't like people being like, oh, what the hell? Wait, oh, you disconnected.
I accidentally did. I paused it, but I'm back.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I hated it. But in high school, no one, like very few people knew I was in foster care. And it'd be funny because one person was like, yo, man, every year you got a new grandma. What's up with that?
Now, here's the thing, because like you and I have been crossing paths for years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like we're the best of friends, but we've had some very good conversations along the way.
Yeah.
And I have to say, and I bet you've thought about this. I feel like amongst comedians, you're remarkably well adjusted. Like you're able to have a conversation, look people, make eye contact. That's where the bar is set in comedy. Is most of these motherfuckers can't even make eye contact when they talk to you, or only converse in bits.
Dude, that's the system. I have to blame that on the system, man. My life was full of talking to people, like living in group homes. I had to talk to staff, psychologists, therapists. I tell a joke about this, but like foster kids get used a lot as like poster children when it comes time for election season, right? And I was always a part of like youth advisory boards and shit. So we would have to talk to politicians and we would have to take classes on how to conduct ourselves during interviews and stuff. So I felt like that was more of the system being like, this is how you communicate with people. And yeah, it gave me a level up where I wasn't afraid of like speaking in public and stuff like that.
Because I will say, like I've sat and broke bread with you at tables, and it's a far more comfortable experience than some of these fucking maladjusted psychopaths who had very happy parents. You know, some of these people we're around in comedy where they just like stare at their feet and then just
I don't get it.
And I just
assume people are autistic. I just go, they autistic.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of comedy people who aren't autistic but feel autistic.
Yeah.
And they had great childhoods, is the sense I get.
Great. It's like, all the advantages. How did your parents fuck you up?
Yeah, it's wild. And I'm not the best. I'm not saying I'm the best at conversations. But Jesus Christ, some of these people that we have to be around in our profession are trainers.
Yeah. You know me, I just say it like, you're somebody that I can sit down and talk to, but some people I go, hey, what's up? And I just keep it moving. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because sometimes all people know how to do is talk shit anyway. And I don't really like doing
a lot
that.
Of shit talk. Somebody walks down and they'll be like, professor, I'm sorry, my paper's late. And I'm like, I do not want to spend the next 40 minutes doing a bit where I'm a professor and you're a student. Yeah. I don't want to do some weird professor. What is this? Oh, boss, sorry, I'm late for work again, boss. I'm like, I'm not your boss. We're two adult grown-ups. We don't have to speak only in bits. Stop. Yeah. Stop with this nonsense.
Dude, but no, thank you, man. Sometimes I feel like I'm not well adjusted. I'm dealing with certain shit. You know what I mean? Like, I think I had like a realization that I went from one system to the next, right? Because this is my first career. Like before this, I just did like entry-level jobs and shit like that. I worked with kids. I worked at Dave & Buster's. I worked at the Philadelphia Zoo and stuff. But once I left foster care and that whole system, I aged out at 21. At 22, I started doing comedy, and it's literally the same shit.
Yeah.
You know? Like the way that comedy moves, where you got to talk to agents and lawyers and managers and all of that stuff, and you always got to check in with somebody. That's the same shit in foster care. And it's traveling and never being comfortable. Like I was just never comfortable.
Going on a road getting to a club and figuring out who's the person who's in charge, who's the person who's
Mm-hmm.
really in charge.
Yeah.
What are the ways that everything's fucked up that you're going to have to be the one to kind of fill in the gaps?
Mm-hmm.
That is comedy too.
Yep. So, growing up in foster care definitely got me ready for this life. You know, sleeping on uncomfortable beds and shit.
What a stunning condemnation of comedy.
Yeah. Like my wife, like even though we've been together for 7 years, like she'll still call me out on my foster kid tendencies. Like if you came in my office, everything is in a container, like a container store type thing. Because I am in my brain, I'm always ready to go. Like I'm not planning on getting anything, leaving, but my closet, this is my closet behind me. I don't know if you can see it. But dog, all my clothes, they're hung up in a way where I can just fucking scoop them together, throw them in a trash bag. Yeah. And I don't know if I can ever shake that. Like that's something where like I can't shake that feeling of like, hey, at any moment something can happen and I gotta go. So I'm ready.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, back to you.
Okay.
If you got jumped, if you got beat up and then you went home, are your parents the type that will comfort you and be like, oh, it's all right? Or will they send you back outside until you won that fight?
Well, the second one. And I say that from experience. Because I would say my home life was good. Like I said, like my mom did the guilt thing. My dad was kind of a tough nut who I didn't want to piss him off, but that's a lot better than a lot of people had. My home life was pretty good. The shit that I put up with in school and in the neighborhood was not okay.
Yeah.
The bullying. We mentioned my brother. You knew him in Philly comedy circles. Like between knowing the both of us, I'm sure you're not shocked to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, our last name spells the words Gethard, and we're both fucking weirdos.
Yeah.
And there were some people who came at us, and I learned to fight in a way that's surprising sometimes to people. And my dad will still, like, he tells my wife, he's like, there were times where, like, I would get a call that Chris had gotten in another fight at school, and he's like, I remember once picking you up, and the kid was like a solid foot taller than you. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing, man?
Yeah.
Because that kid had pushed me around in gym class and I picked up a badminton racket off the floor and started beating the shit out of him. Like stuff like that. So that's a funny thing for me too, which I don't know if you would agree with this or if you've picked up on this, but like, I think the nature of my comedy is pretty soft and pretty, storytelling and trying to be thoughtful and, did the whole HBO special, which was very emo and stuff. But there's some comedians that I think have had some comments about me being soft, but then there's other comedians who step in and have been like, no, like his act is soft, but like he's kind of fucking crazy. And I was pretty I was pretty crazy for a lot of my childhood because especially being, I took some shit myself, but especially being the younger brother of someone. I mean, my brother got bullied in a way that was unforgivable. It was really unforgivable. And I kind of learned from that and was like, okay, the second someone says something to you and you see a fight coming, throw the first punch, get it over with. So I became a very angry kid because of that. So I was, my parents almost had to ask me to stop fighting.
Yo, you could have easily ended up in group homes. That's all group homes is full of, just kids who love fighting.
Yeah, I didn't even love it. I would also, I did this weird thing. I remember I would get in fights and I would get so fucking pissed and like emotional and worked up and scared. I was little. That I'd always start going like and start crying and like being unable to breathe. And I remember a couple times being in fights where it was like the schoolyard fight where like the circle forms around everybody, and the teachers can't get through, and seeing that the other person was watching me breathing like fucking. Remember that wrestler, the Berserker? Remember that guy was like, I would be like making noises like the Berserker. And I remember seeing other people being like, oh, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
Fucked up, man.
Dude, don't you do like MMA now? I remember talking to
Jiu-jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I remember, do you remember we was at the table at the cellar and Keith was like, would you would you fight Chris? I'm like, no, he fucking does MMA.
Yeah, I have a lot of rage. It's funny because it's like I think my act is very soft and emo, but some of that is because I think
But
that
what,
there's a
does
part of
it
me that's like
need to be angry? I feel like
the
people who
exact.
are
I'm like
angry in their sets aren't really like that in real life. I feel
I've
like
had
it's
an
always a difference.
I've had so many issues with anger in real life that I'm like I don't really care to put more of it into the world.
Yeah.
Um, when I have a chance to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
Like if my comedy is trying to hit people and try to affect them, it's like, well, maybe I can make this 15 to 20 minutes kind of more on my terms. And I'd love for that to be less angry, less
Mm-hmm.
chaotic, less
Yeah.
with this feeling that people are out to get you, less that we need to be pissed off all the time. Because in a lot of my real life, historically, I have spent it being pissed off all the fucking time and
Yeah.
scared a lot of the time and assuming that people have bad intentions a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of those were feelings that it took me a very, very long time to sort out and let go of.
Did
And
therapy help with that?
oh, it was necessary. I mean, I was at a breaking point when I found therapy. I was gonna die if I didn't get into therapy for sure.
Like suicide or
Yeah.
just
Oh,
from stress? Like
100% suicide. I was headed in that direction. And had like people who loved me.
yeah.
It hit a breaking point finally where an ex-girlfriend of mine, I called her one night and I was completely wigged out of my fucking skull, like ranting, raving, all this paranoid shit. She was like, I'm calling your mom when we hang up. So maybe you should just go wake her up and tell her that you need to see a psychiatrist like tomorrow. And she really saved my life with that. Cause I was really, I mean, like getting to a point where it was like paranoid delusions and shit.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, when people like to talk shit about me or say that I'm soft, I'm like, I've earned the right to be soft after a lifetime of fucking anger and actual like I said, like paranoid fucking delusions about stuff. So
yeah.
if I want to be a little soft now, I'm totally okay with that.
I think that people don't really have a understanding on what masculinity really is, right?
And I think that
Like
the definition is that's changing in a big way.
Yeah.
In even as we speak, you know.
I grew up. One of the upsides of growing up in group homes, because in foster care, I didn't really have like positive male figures in my life. I had like 2 foster dads, and both of them fought me because I was always big, right? So like as a kid, I'm fighting grown ass men. Like I accidentally
like
dislocated physically. I dislocated one of my foster dad's arms one time because he tried to choke me.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
man.
so I try not to fight because I'm also like, I grew up fighting, like, even though I'm big, I'm like, I had to fight adults. I had to get in, like, growing up in group homes, you getting put in, like, illegal chokeholds and, like illegal restraints. And these are grown men putting all their body weight on you and using all your strength. And as a kid, you gotta learn how to like maneuver out of that shit and like level up your strength and stuff. So, but yeah, when I got to group homes, I feel like I had better role models there, or just better mentors who would like try to guide me into being like, hey, I know you think being tough and trying to fight everybody is masculine, but it isn't. Being reserved and refraining from that shit is more masculine than giving in. And then when I went to Africa with my wife last year, yeah, we were in the fucking, you know what the Maasai are? You know?
Right, yeah.
They're like warriors. All these motherfuckers are wearing skirts and fucking those little beads around their waist and shit. And they kill, like they're prepared to kill. Like I befriended like one of them, and like at the age of 16, him and like 4 other kids had to kill a lion. And I'm like, you fucking with me. And he like, no, like that's the rite of passage. And he was like, it used to be 1 lion per kid, but because of like the endangered species list and all that stuff, they had to like, the government had to step in and be like,
they team up on lions now?
Yeah, they got to, just to conserve. It's like the government didn't go, hey, stop killing lions. They were like, all right, look, we're going to have to split the bill. How about 5 of y'all kill 1 lion?
That is very wild to think about.
Yeah. But to me, I'm looking at that like, oh, that's Like these guys are like soft spoken. Like we was in situations where we were up close to a lion and shit, and they were just calm. You know, like we seen a fucking lion take a gazelle in the tree and like eat it and like drop pieces down
Yeah.
to his cub. And I'm like, what the fuck? And they were just like used to it. They're like, yeah, this is our life and stuff like that. But yeah, man, I'm looking at masculinity a lot different now. And I feel like people who like posture and act tough and all that stuff, I'm like, all right, you're really just like hiding something. You're like,
Absolutely.
you know?
Growing up in Jersey too, growing up around like, now everybody knows about them because of Jersey Shore and stuff, but you'd be around these Guidos who are always trying to act tough and stuff. It's like, it never came off as particularly fucking impressive to me. It was more like, you guys all seem like unhinged in a way that's just sad. It's like, this seems unhealthy and sad to just want to constantly be chirping in people's faces about whatever the fuck. Like the people who always struck me as the most sort of badass and impressive were generally pretty quiet kids. Like it's those people who you don't want them to fucking snap. Those are the ones who I always was like, those people scare me a lot more than the people that are trying to fight in the lunchroom. Like,
yeah, like if you saying something to a kid and he's unaffected, I just stop. I was like, all right.
He just like looks at you and you're like, ooh, no, thanks.
You're like,
no,
nah. Yo, so as a kid, did you find yourself taking on like adult responsibilities? Like, did you find yourself like having to cook for yourself and clean and even shut the house down? You know what shutting the house down means, right?
Like getting it all locked up at night and make sure the windows are locked and all that.
Yeah.
No, I would say I was woefully underprepared for adult life because my mom, she was a teacher sometimes in my childhood, but she actually she was raised us for a bunch of it. And then she got sick. So she was home. So I think she took a lot of pride in it, but I remember like, I lose major points because it took me a long time just to figure out like how to do my own laundry, how to wash dishes in a way that was acceptable. Like,
what age did you learn how to do all of that stuff?
I would say in my 20s, even in my 30s. I mean, there were times when the first woman I lived with was my wife. I never lived with anyone I dated before her. So I always had roommates. My roommate most of my time in New York was just this dude I went to college with who we did comedy together at Rutgers. Like, we were both fucking messes. I lived in a room in Woodside with no closet, so all my clothes were on the fucking floor. I moved in with my wife, and she was like, "Oh, you're like a child. This is not good. Like, I got to teach you, like, hey, when you see mildew around the ring in the bathtub, spray it down and use a sponge on it. Don't just let it fucking grow. Like, I can't, I'm like out here trying to pick up girls, bring people home, and my wife is coming by like, hey, like, so I'm like a grown-up human and I don't want to be showering in your house after we had sex and look down and see mold. Like, clean your shit up, So I was pretty bad with that, actually.
Oh, so you didn't have to breathe in all those chemicals when you were younger?
No.
Breathe in Ajax, the mixture of Ajax and bleach.
I remember I had a duvet on my bed when I started dating my wife, and she was like, where's your duvet cover? And I was like, isn't this just like a bedspread? And she's like, no, this type of blanket has a cover. Go buy one. And I went to the Bed Bath & Beyond by LaGuardia Airport. And I remember this very, very cartoonishly, like very adorable mom and daughter Jewish ladies from Queens were shopping. And I was like, can you help me get a duvet? I don't know how to get a duvet cover. And she was like, all right, okay, you're trying to impress a lady? We're going to get you something gray because she's going to find it very masculine. Okay, do you know about shams and throws? I was like, are those types of pillows? She's like, yeah, if you want to impress a girl, have a couple shams, couple throws. You move those off the bed before she comes over, okay? She walked me through it all, but it was some random Jewish mom and daughter in Queens that taught me how to buy a duvet cover at the Bed Bath & Beyond. I was like 32 years old at the time.
God damn. I think the first duvet cover, I didn't get a duvet cover until I got married. Like, even though I gained my independence very young, like I started living on my own at what was that, 19? I didn't have pillows until I was I'm being honest. Like, there was like at least a year where I didn't have pillows. I had pillowcases, so I would just like fold up like a winter coat and just stuff it in a goddamn pillowcase.
Wow, dude.
Yeah. I also wasn't like expecting a chick to come back to my place.
Yeah, it took me way. I was one of those assholes who I would like have a whole thing of like I realized I used to have a little game when I was single where I'd talk to girls
Mhm.
and be like, "Yeah, my life's not together. I sleep in like the top half of a loft bed on the floor. It's all fucked up." And I'd be able to make it like I was really charming almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they'd get there and see how much it was actual reality,
Oh,
and
they be
just
like, "Oh, he wasn't
mul-
joking. This shit looked
multiple
like."
girls who were like, but it was funny too because sometimes it would be I had a friend who once told me I slept in a dog bed because I slept in this disassembled loft bed, and I'd be like talking with a girl at a bar or something, be like, like if we were like making out or something, I'd be like, I can't invite you back to my place because I sleep in a dog bed, and they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'd be like, it's not really a dog bed, but a friend of mine says it looks like a dog bed, and a couple times it would lead to the girl being like, well, I got to see this dog bed, and then they'd come
Yeah.
home with me,
And then
and it
fuck you
was
in a
like
dog bed.
cute and charming, and then but then the next morning they'd be like, fuck this, you loser, get a bed, you loser. Like, you weren't kidding. That wasn't just a game to like charm me. What am I
Dude.
doing sleeping on the fucking floor in Woodside, Queens? Fuck this.
I used to have the IKEA bed where the slacks in the middle would just always like
Oh, the
break.
worst. The
And now it's
worst. Yeah,
just
you're
like,
too big
yeah,
for that.
dude, I hate that shit. When I first moved to New York, I like moved to New York. Before when I came here, I lived in Jersey with Derek, but then like we got kicked out of that place and I moved into a hostel. And I got a lot. Now I wouldn't say a lot, but I got a fair amount of vagina for somebody who's was sleeping in bunk beds for a couple of months.
Are
And I'm
you
like,
allowed
yeah,
to bring people back to a hostel, or do you always have to go back to her place at that point?
no, I did. You
And
know,
what do you have to like pay a fee for the night to have a guest?
I don't know. I just like I didn't care. They were stealing my stuff. Like they were like I would leave, and then every time I come back, there's like a pair of socks missing, some drawers missing, or whatever. So I kind of just was like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. Like I stopped like caring about the rules. It was a bunch of like foreign exchange students and what is it? Flight attendants. Those are the only people that really stay in hospitals. It was in Kew Gardens, Queens. It was in a gigantic mansion in Kew
So
Gardens,
by the
Queens.
airports, that's why you got all the flight attendants.
Mm-hmm. And it was illegal. I found it on Craigslist. I didn't know it was illegal. One day I just came back, like after a night of spots, to a note on the front door that saying like this it was being shut down by like I guess like the marshals or whatever. So
Jeez,
everybody
dude.
had to just grab their shit and find somewhere else to go. And I was like, all right, I can't keep living like this. That's when that sense of urgency kicked in. And I was like, I got to figure out how to make comedy work.
Wow, dude.
Man.
Did you ever do? I never did it, but there's that famous hostel comedy show up near
Oh, in
Central Park.
Harlem?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
way up there, and everybody tells me that show was crazy. I don't know if the guy still does it.
That was years ago. I mean,
I was
that
on
was
his mailing list, and I never did it. I always wanted to.
no, it was fun. I forgot who ran it, but it was actually fun. That was like, it's like performing at the Cellar, and not performing at the Cellar, meaning like the cash, like just like the accomplishment of it, just like how the Cellar is like very mixed with like international crowd and shit like that. And
That's what
some people
everybody
don't
said.
speak
It's
it.
like you
It's
got
like
some
that.
Germans trying to
Yeah.
leave for the night. You're trying to get them to just stay for the comedy show. But I heard the
Yeah.
guy who hosted it would do the same 20 minutes up top every
Mhm.
time for
Mhm.
years. And someone, who knows if this is just comedy urban legend, someone told me he had a bit that involved him having like fake dynamite strapped to himself, and he'd open up his shirt and make people think he was going to bomb the place. But he
Yo,
was
that's a
kind of a
terrible
weird
bit.
dude. So
I ain't
people
never
just were
seen
really
that.
scared.
Yo, that's a terrible bit.
There's
I would
legends
not do
about
that.
that guy.
Yeah. No, I don't remember. I don't remember that, but I definitely remember it being work. You know,
Yeah.
because yeah, he didn't really get them like ready for comedy.
They're just visiting New York and want to
Yeah.
see the Empire State Building. And he's
And
like, no, comedy show, don't leave.
dude,
That's a
and
tough
it's just
crowd.
as open micers, we're trying to figure out how to relate to people, and it's difficult when they are from a whole nother country, and you're like, yeah, man, the train is crazy. They're like, we don't know shit about this fucking train. We just got here, dog.
Yeah, I'm from Luxembourg. What are you talking about?
Have you ever had to purchase beer or cigarettes from for a family member? Like run to the store and grab beer and cigarettes and stuff? How old were you when you did it?
Not for a family member, but this is very North Jersey. My best friend growing up lived a couple blocks away from a place called Eddie's Meat Market. And my best friend, his mom would sometimes send us to Eddie's for cigarettes. And I remember clocking it young of like, she would always send us with a note.
Yeah.
And he would never even ask to look at the note. And I remembered realizing pretty quickly of like, oh, he doesn't give a fuck if I'm smoking these cigarettes or if they're really for an adult. He doesn't care. Yeah. And then years later, that guy got busted shamefully for selling cocaine out of the meat market to like 8th grade kids, 7th grade kids.
Oh, wow. God damn.
Yeah, which I'm like, because it's wild, because now I'm old enough to know like maybe weed to an 8th grader, but like if you can't sell coke to adults, you're just being lazy. Like there's a market for cocaine. Like you really don't need 8th graders buying your cocaine. Like adults will willingly, you should be able to build a client base of any number of stressed out adults who will actively take your cocaine.
Yeah.
You're selling it to kids. That's really scummy. Even by North Jersey standards, that's pretty scummy, man.
Where do these kids get the money to buy cocaine?
I don't know what was happening with their low. I'm sorry, I X'd out of the app again by accident.
Oh, no problem. Hold on.
But yeah, so I bought cigarettes from my friend's mom. My mom never sent me to buy her cigarettes.
Oh, all right. You living with a wholesome family.
A pretty wholesome family. Like my life within my house was pretty good.
What was your bedtime routine like then? Did they read to you? Was it like I grew up in households where there were no bedtime routine. They like 8 o'clock came and I'm like, all right, get your ass in that room, and you had to be quiet. It didn't matter if you was asleep or not. It was don't move. If they hear any noise, you're getting your ass beat.
I didn't get my ass beat for it, but it was pretty close to like, all right, dinner, homework, brush your teeth, get in bed. We don't want to hear you. That was kind of the vibe, but yeah, I wouldn't get my ass kicked for not doing that. But I also, one thing I really remember about growing up that was kind of a lawless thing was my mom, in a way that affects me to this day, but that was cool when I was a kid. There were no restrictions on eating. Like if I wanted to go into the freezer and take out a half gallon of ice cream and eat the whole thing, no one was gonna. My mom, she had nothing to say about that. We had a fridge in our basement, dude. Remember the Dre and Snoop video with the fridge full of 40s, like it's top to bottom 40s?
Yeah.
We had that, but with Yoo-Hoo and Hawaiian Punch.
Whoa, yo.
It was like awesome.
I've been over your house every damn day.
Dude, kids used to come raid it, and my parents would just refill it. And I look back now and I'm like, wow, that's wild by modern standards. Just let kids chug. I mean, if I wanted to drink 6 of those boxes of Hawaiian Punch a day, no problem. My son now, if he had half a box of that shit, he'd be bouncing off the walls.
Dude, were you fat as a kid because of it?
No, but now I kind of carry around a lot of weight because my ability to restrict my eating is dog shit. And I'm not trying to. My mom gets mad because sometimes I'll like give her the business on this and fuck with her. Yeah. But I'm like, I definitely walk around with a little belly, but it's because if I'm around food, I just fucking eat it. I can't stop.
No self-control.
I have skinny arms and legs and then a real fucking dad bod stomach. And a lot of that goes back to my childhood. Yeah. Because I mean, like, don't even put the ice cream in a bowl. Just take the ice cream out of the freezer and just start scooping it right out of the fucking carton into my mouth.
People who put ice cream in a bowl, they're fucking psycho. It's like eat it out the carton. It's already in a bowl.
These pretentious fucks.
I do the same thing. I'll be honest. I have never, like, just now, I can't say never. Like, I just stopped eating a whole quart of ice cream. Yeah. You know what I mean? You get like a nice little pint or a quart. There's no way that I can just save some for later. Like, I have to eat it all in that sitting. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, I'm the same way to this day. And some of it is just because of the lawlessness of eating habits back then.
Yeah. See, it was mixed for me. In group homes, it was none of that. Like, you ate when you ate, and if you didn't, like, dinner was always at, like, 6. And if you didn't eat dinner, then it was kind of like, all right, whatever. Like they weren't going to sit down and force you to eat and stuff like that, right? So then some foster homes I lived in, they would like, I won't say they locked the refrigerator, but they definitely had like food restrictions where they're like, yo, I better not hear that fridge open after 7. Yeah, we hear that fridge open after 7, it's a problem. And then I had like one foster mom who didn't care. Her name was Miss Pearl. She didn't give a fuck. Like she encouraged me to eat everything. That was probably like when I started getting fat. Cause she didn't care. She would get mad if there was like leftovers. She'd be like, but you didn't like it? You didn't like the food? You didn't like my cooking? Yeah. And now I have to go back in there and get like a third plate.
But that is showing love in some way, right? Is that weird of me to think? That's her effort to kind of connect.
I think so. She taught me how to cook. Yeah, no, she taught me how to cook, but I definitely was like getting fat as shit because she was letting me eat anything I wanted. And that was the first person that did that. Like most foster parents, they're like, all right, you eat what you eat. You eat what I give you. And if you don't eat it, then we'll try again tomorrow. What was the worst meal you had?
Ever in my life?
But that your parents made?
It was, my mom will tell you, she'll be the first to tell you she wasn't a great cook.
Mm-hmm.
She used to try to make a pepper steak, it was called. It was like homemade Chinese food. And I ate it my whole childhood and I never liked it once. But my grandma wasn't a great cook either. She like real Irish Catholic cooking, like it. Mm-hmm. She'd always make these pot roasts where it was like chewing on a fucking catcher's mitt. It was horribly dry meat, dry fibrous meat.
You're the second Irish Catholic we had on the show. We had Maddie Smith on the show, and that seems to be the theme with Irish people. Is this y'all can't cook?
No, it was bad. It was bad cooking.
What did like, how do they survive in Ireland? Are they just fucking...
I mean, they barely did. They had the whole fucking famine, yeah. There was a whole potato famine, and they all died or left. It was fucked up.
Yeah, but I would think, like, after the fact, I'd be like, all right, yo, I got to make sure that I enjoy food. Oh, fuck, what the hell is happening to the controller? I'd be like, all right, I got to enjoy food. I'm gonna master this culinary art. Versus just be like, all right, well, fuck it. I'm going to just give people meatloaf with ketchup on top.
Yeah, I had a lot of meatloaf with ketchup. That was a pretty good meal. That was a pretty good day at my house, the meatloaf with ketchup day. I did have one aunt who learned how to cook Italian food, I think, because she grew up with the bad Irish food. Yeah. And she can cook fucking Italian food like crazy. Oh. Which, again, that's a very North Jersey thing to be Irish Catholic, but really good at cooking Italian food. Mm-hmm. That's like a real North Jersey move right there. But that was always good. When my Aunt Rose was cooking, that was always good. But my mom gets mad about it because she's always like, everybody always talks about how good Rose's cooking is. And I'm like, yeah, but it's fucking good. So
yeah, that's not on. Your mom shouldn't get mad. She should work on her skills. My mom can't cook for shit. Yeah. Me and my sister, I think the first time I ever seen my mom like truly sad because of something we did, it was the first Thanksgiving that me and my sister went over to. Because my mom, like we never lived with her and she was starting to get her shit together. And she was like renting a room. She was she was dating my stepdad at the time. And she invited us over for Thanksgiving. And it was disgusting. Like, I don't know. I didn't know black people can fuck up soul food at that point. Like, I thought it was just ingrained in us that we all knew how to fry a chicken and cook some collard greens and make baked macaroni and cheese until I tasted my mom's cooking. I was like, what the fuck is this? So we kind of just like was picking and stuff. And then afterwards we went to McDonald's and she found out. She got so mad. Like, she was like crying and shit. But that was the McDonald's.
A big deal for her to have you there. Now, did you and your sister always stay in the same environments, or would you be put in different homes and have to figure out how to stay in touch?
Different homes. I had to figure out how to stay in touch. We never lived with each other until I was old enough to live on my own, and then she stayed with me until she got her own place.
So you turned 21, and then took her in?
Yeah. So
how much younger is she?
My sister's like a year younger than me. We're Irish twins. Isn't that what they call it?
They do.
Yeah. So we're Irish twins. We're back to back. And yeah, so once I aged out of the system, I got a place living in South Philly. And it wasn't even like it was like I lived on the top floor of like this brownstone. And then they had a room across the hall, and I was like, yo, let's just like move in there. And we shared the kitchen, the bathroom, and all this stuff. It was pretty cool, but she a woman. She wanted more. She wanted her own thing. So she ended up like getting a house in Philly.
Dude,
Yeah.
I cannot believe that you are a functioning human being.
Me neither. Like, for real. I'm like, I should be more fucked up.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like lying dormant. You know, maybe there's a situation that needs to happen, and then everything will be just fucking become unhinged.
Well, that's not good. That's not good to hear that there's just a quiet suspicion that when you do blow, it's going to be real bad.
Yo, that's like a fear of mine. I talk about it on stage. You know, I'm like, yo, I don't do like I smoke weed and stuff, but like I tried shrooms once, and it was me and my wife, and it didn't work. And I was kind of relieved because I was like online reading that like shrooms can sometimes cause like fucking like psychosis and all that shit. And I was like, yo, the last thing I need is to be activated. Is fucking flip out and do some goddamn sleeper cell. So, but that I'm telling you, that is a fear of mine. I don't know if it sounds stupid, but I do have a fear of like not knowing what's going to send me over the edge or a situation that's going to happen.
Now it's like, this is getting very real now.
I'm being honest.
I'm sitting here, I'm like, you're more well-adjusted than all the other comedians. And then with nothing but cheeriness in your voice, you're like, yeah, but someday something's going to activate it. At that point, it's all over.
I hope not. I'm not willing it into existence, but I'm definitely like, all right, man. Like, there's some things where I'm just like, I don't know. Like I got mental illness in my family and shit. Like my actual biological family. Like I would hang out with them whenever we had like weekend visits because my mom like she didn't have a place to like live. So when I would visit her on the weekend, it was always at another family member's house. And I remember just being at barbecues and you just seeing how people conduct themselves. And you're like, something off. That's not right. And these were grown-ups. And I'm like, wait, when does that shit kick in? Like, when is this mental illness going to kick in? Because I need to know. I need to look out for something. But yo, I know. Make me sound crazy. I have irrational fears. And one of my fears is just been like, I hope I don't go crazy. I just hope I don't lose it. Like I had an uncle, we can bleep his name out, but I had an Uncle Jimmy who was like a scholar. You know, he was like going to be like one of the first people to like go to like a really good school in our family. And I think he was like hanging out with my aunt, my mom, and they were like doing some shit and it unlocked some shit in his brain and he was never the same. He didn't go to that college the following year. And he just locked himself in the back room of my great grandmother's house for years. Wow. He would just wear a robe. He would just like walk around with like a fucking bathrobe on, and he wouldn't speak. Like as a kid, when you see like a grown man, he would just go to the bathroom, come back. Maybe like we have to knock on his door to like bring him food and shit. He wouldn't even say thank you.
That's like a really fucked up thing for a kid to see, dude.
Yeah. So now you see why I'm like, when the fuck is this shit going to happen?
I hate to say this because I've always like every time we've worked on something together, I enjoy it. Every time we get to shoot the shit, I'm psyched. Yeah. But I do have to say, I don't know if I've ever felt better about my childhood than during this conversation.
Look, hey man, it's fine. But yeah, nah, dog. I was like fucked up shit was just normal. You know what I mean? Like I grew up watching adults. Like I grew up watching like moms fight their daughters and call them bitches and shit. And that was just so normal to see. You know what I mean? Like I remember talking, you know Chloe?
Of course.
Yeah, I remember the funniest. To her. It was like, yo, life is different where you realize like adults don't really have any authority. Like when you're a
None.
kid and you realize you're like, wait, I can talk back. I can fucking like I got adults fighting me and shit. I'm like, wait, something's off with the world. If an adult doesn't act like an adult, then like you know what I mean? It just kind of like I
Yeah,
didn't grow up
man.
respecting authority.
I remember there were certain teachers who I fucking hated as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm a grown up and I'm like, man, some of the people I went to school with who became teachers
Yeah.
were the fucking like shittiest, most egocentric, narcissist kids.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, those were the teachers I was dealing with. They were bad people. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
fucking cool. They did not have good intentions. They just wanted to be able to sit in front of the room and everybody have to have forced respect for them. And
Yeah.
that's not all teachers, obviously, but when you get older and you realize like, oh, some of the people that are like actual authority figures are just fucking worthless pieces of shit. It's
Yeah.
really eye-opening. It's
Yeah.
really eye-opening as a grown-up.
Oh, when I feel like Philly kids are very aggressive, right? And we throw
Yeah.
the word pussy around a lot. We call anybody a pussy. And I remember the first time I called an adult man a pussy,
Whoa.
nothing happened. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, fuck that. I don't gotta listen to these adults. And then life was just, I don't know, it was different, man. I
I had
definitely am like, oh, go ahead.
I had a teacher who in high school, and again, my older brother, I grew up
Mm-hmm.
the best. He's the best, but he was a troublemaker and he was a weird guy. And there were some teachers who had not enjoyed teaching him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd have to deal with that shit, you know, when I got them years later. And there was one teacher who one time, and I swear I'd not even done anything. She was just in a bad mood,
Mm-hmm.
started yelling at me about something in front of a bunch of people and yelled, "This is what I should expect from a Gethard." Like yelled that in front of
Oh,
all these people in my high school hallway. And I was humiliated and I was pissed, you know? And then,
yeah.
dude, years later, my career worked out as it had, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I was on TV and it was cool. And that's a nice thing. But there was one day where I was going to go on the Kelly Ripa show to promote something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, a morning show. My mom used to watch Regis and Kathy Lee before
Yeah.
Kelly Ripa took over. Loved that. My mom loved that show.
Yeah.
And that teacher from my high school sent me a message on Facebook that was like, "Did I just see them announce you're going to be on Kelly Ripa?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, that's so amazing." And I'm like, "Thanks." I'm giving one word answers. I have not talked to this person in 20 years and I
Yeah.
did not like my memories of her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Do you ever talk about high school on stage?" And I was like, "Yeah, not really." She's like, "I bet if you did, you'd have a lot of material." And I was like, "Maybe." I'm giving like terse answers. And she goes,
Yeah.
she's like, "I bet you'd get a lot of material just out of me alone." And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, why is she fucking poking the bee's nest on this one? Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? So I wrote back and I was like, maybe I could do some jokes about that time that in front of dozens of my classmates, you yelled out, "This is what I should expect from a Gethard." And you shamed my family name and pushed me to the point where I was fucking like having a fucking panic attack and crying in front of all my peers. You want me to talk
Oh.
about that on stage? And she was like, "Did I really do that?" And I was like, "Yep." And she's like, "Well, I know it's too late now. I know it's many years too late, but I am
Mm-hmm.
sorry about that." And I was like, "Just don't fucking talk to me. You
You
fucking
said
like,"
that?
I think I let it go at that point. I called my mom though. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
because my mom still has a friend who's a teacher in our old town. And I was like, "You might be hearing, I don't know if word will get back to you, but I just got into it." And I told her what teacher. And my
Mm-hmm.
mom was like, "You know what? Good. She was a fucking asshole. Like, good. I'm glad you told her off. She used to give you a hard time, and I saw it too."
Wait, but was your mom the type that'll pop off? Like she'll show up to the school and
She
defend your
tried
honor?
sometimes. So, like, we grew up in a town in North Jersey where the school system was pretty fucked up in my era, and there was like I remember once my brother got beat up at school
Mm-hmm.
to the point where his shoulder was broken, dude, like a broken bone in a schoolyard fight.
God
And
damn.
my mom went down there. And I remember they said to her, she was like, "Okay, like who did it?" And they told him, and she's like, "All right, so what's happening to that kid?" And they were like, "Well, the thing is, that kid's dad is an alcoholic, and if he gets in trouble at school, like his dad's gonna beat him, so we
Yeah.
can't really do anything." And I remember my mom kind of expressing years later, like feeling like she was in this position that was like, okay, like that's horrible that that's happening to that kid. But like, you can't just let kids get their bones broken in your fucking school.
Yeah, no, that's a weird situation.
It was really fucked up. And you look
Yeah.
back at it now and you go, what should have happened is that school should have been calling like the state authorities to get that
Mm-hmm.
kid out of it. That kid should have been in a fucking foster home for sure. You know, you
Yeah,
got an
absolutely.
alcoholic dad beating your ass. But what happens when the school has too many reports like that? The school system's grade starts to go down. It affects the property values in town, all these fucking things. So
Mm.
a lot of stuff like that would happen where there was a lot of dark shit happening
Mm-hmm.
and it was just getting kind of swept under the rug or covered up. Or Matt, I think back to that a lot
Yeah.
from my school experience. So I think
That's not, but that's
my
not
mom had a lot of
normal though.
hopelessness. No, it was
Yeah.
dark. It was dark. And a lot of people I run into who I went to school with in that era, we will often talk, especially not even the high school, is 6th, 7th, 8th grade was when a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us were like, we went to this one middle school in the half a town that was not as nice.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of friends basically express some version of like, man, that school was really fucked up by anybody's standards. That was a fucked up place to go to school. And that I would say, like, you know, some of this podcast is like you telling me about the foster experience and me going,
Mm-hmm.
well, my family, but if there was anything that was fucked up, it was the stuff like that of just
Yeah.
like bullying and a school system that didn't step up and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that where you see, like, I remember, dude, there was this one kid and he used to get made fun of because he used to just walk all night. You'd see him, you know, your parents would take you to the Burger King and you'd be driving across town. You'd be like, there's that kid. I won't say his name,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and he had this fucking weird scar on his head.
Yeah.
And we were all like, oh, there's that kid with the weird scar who just walks around all night. And then we got older and realized that scar was apparently, and again, this is rumor. I'm not naming his
Mm-hmm.
name. I don't think he'll hear this, but like the thing you started to hear was, oh, his dad is real fucked up and abuses him and
Yeah.
once burned his head with a clothing iron.
Oh.
And he walks around all night because he just doesn't feel safe at home. He doesn't want to be at home. And I sit there and I go, man, I think back to it and I go, that kid was kind of this like urban legend where you'd always see him walking. You'd drive by him in the car, you'd be like, there he is, he's walking again.
Yeah.
But you sit there and you go, some adults, whether it was teachers, whether it was other parents, whether it was the neighbors in his neighborhood who saw him leaving his house every day, someone knew and nobody picked up the phone and fucking made the call.
Yeah,
and
no,
that
that's
was the
weird.
type of stuff happening in my neighborhood that was just unforgivable, you know?
Do you think that's because of like the area you grew up, like you grew up in this Irish Catholic area where everybody just kind of minded their business? It was like,
everything, yeah.
Because that's all that shit, like, I don't know what it is about growing up in Philadelphia, but Philadelphia hood, like they were just putting kids in foster care. Like shit like that. Like if a kid came to school too many times with bruises on them, child services stepped in, right? Like if there were any speculation about abuse, child services stepped in. And that could also be, like, I don't like to throw race into things, but that could also be like a part of systemic racism, right? Where it's just like this neighborhood, like the neighborhood you live in, people are allowed to conduct themselves that way. Like there's a dad who's burning his fucking kid on his head and no one's saying shit. But I'm in an area where a mom sends her kid to a school in another township and she gets arrested and the kids got to go into foster care because she was trying to send her kids to a better school. You know?
Yeah, it's really wild. I mean, and again, I think you're right. I think some of it's this Irish Catholic, like blue collar Jersey toughness, but like I think about it now too. I'm like, the Catholics are really good at covering shit up, man. Like priests fuck kids and no one says anything. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that you start to see how that creates a culture of, well, okay, then somebody had a few too many drinks and hit their kid one night. We don't say anything about that either. You know, like, oh shit, the app just shut down. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
So I know
it's winning though, so I was looking at your meter, because you know how the game works, right? Is this about?
No, I have no idea if I've been winning.
Oh, that's funny.
I've just been going through the motions.
Yeah, no, right now you're in the lead, so you just got to collect the most low power pellets, and then when you get the most power pellets, you can eat other Pac-Man.
Yeah, man. It's do you have that code again? I can rejoin.
Oh shit! Yeah, hold on.
Although I'm not sure if we're winding down, but yeah, that was.
Yeah, no, because you got to go in a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, but yeah, that's like the closest. I often say, like, It's weird. We're getting very real now, which is part of your trick with making us play video games, and we forget how real we're getting. But it's like, I grew up in a neighborhood that was like, kind of white trash. I was just
Mm-hmm.
on, I think my family was just on the other side of that line, but I don't ever judge people.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were I remember there was a kid who used to get made fun of, dude, because he would come to that middle school and his pants were 2 garbage bags that he pulled up around his legs and he like tied them together. Like shit like that, where you think back to it and it's like that kid used to get made fun of for that. And it's like today's standards, it's like that kid gets pulled out of that school the second he shows up wearing garbage bag pants. And people deal with it. And instead he just got fucking made fun of. It's like shit like that used to happen where you'd see like people getting beaten up and kids poor enough that they didn't own fucking pants and like kids with burns on their bodies and nobody doing anything. And like that was the stuff that I dealt with where I'm like, my parents did a very good job, but I was close enough to it. Like I knew kids in my neighborhood who their house had all the windows broken out and they just had saran wrap up in the windows, like real stuff where you're like, you look back to it, you go, that was 2 blocks away. Like I walked past their house on a regular basis. Why the fuck wasn't anybody helping? So that's the closest I had, but my parents did a really good job in their own, and they both grew up in the neighborhood, and a lot of families did. So I think that's part of why nobody was calling the cops on each other too, because it's like 2-3 generations of all these families that know each other and went to school with each other and went to church with each other. So it was real. It was, I don't know.
So there was a lineage of garbage bag pants men in that family, I guess. I don't know. I don't get how you can't. Like I see myself laughing. Like I laugh now and I'm like, garbage pants? Like
he was wearing garbage bags as pants and then going to school and like doing math and going to the lunchroom and getting books out of his locker wearing garbage bags as pants. And
are you like, sure it wasn't like a fashion statement? Like he was just
trying like a Missy Elliott, like a Missy Elliott type thing? I don't think so, man. But it is like you said, like you're asking, like there's this lineage. Like I can say he was from a family that anyone I grew up with in my neighborhood, if I said his family name to them, they'd be like, oh yeah, those kids had it rough. So like a little bit, of like, it was a known thing, but it's that fine line, right? Of like, I look back and wish people helped more, but I think there was also maybe some element of like, you got to allow people to try to slug it out and have their dignity, but there's not dignity in kids who are not safe, So I think there's some misguided intentions there.
It kind of makes that saying just seems hypocritical, right? Like it takes a village. It's like, it doesn't take a village because the village doesn't help. The village will just like point fingers and talk shit and ridicule,
well, it's like, the village might help, but if the village isn't helping, then that's kind of hurting. And I saw that a bunch,
All right, last question, and I'll let you go. If your family was a sitcom, what network would they be on?
Oh, great question. Well, I'll tell you what. I think if I have it right, I think it would be like 70s era CBS, because my mom has often said that her life resembled. You remember All in the Family with Archie Bunker?
I loved All in the Family.
She has said that my family was like a slightly less racist All in the Family. Like my grandfather was a fucking cantankerous, opinionated guy, and my grandmother was just trying to be the peacemaker, and my dad was kind of the meathead who walked into a lot of fucking nonsense.
Yeah.
So I don't think my grandfather was as bad as Archie Bunker, but I have heard that comparison to my family before.
Yeah.
So I would say I think that was 70s era CBS. I think my family would be a good fit there. One of those year shows.
Yo, all right. So we're at the end of the show. I don't deem you public property. Like even though the neighborhood you grew up in was fucked up and everybody was going through their own shit and you had to fight a lot, your family seemed like they tried their best to make sure that you were well adjusted.
They did. And they did a great job. I think I've realized that too. I don't think I was public property. Grew up with a bunch of kids who should have been, though. I can say that for a fact.
Yeah, no, I can hear it. Those trash bag on the windows, people, I definitely lived in one of those houses where I'm like, yo, you can just get the window fixed. Windows aren't that expensive.
It's true. It's very true. Very true.
Yo, tell the people where they can find you at, Chris.
Chris Geth on Instagram, chrisgeth.com, Chris Gethard on Twitter, the Beautiful Anonymous podcast. I always got a bunch of dumb shit out there. So
stay working, man. I appreciate it. I love seeing your work ethic, man.
I do my best, man. I'm also just trying to slow down and enjoy having a kid now too. So doing that whole thing. So
how do you deal with that though? How do you deal with that brain? Because the brain, I understand the brain of I gotta get it, I gotta do something, but then you have this kid that you created, and you're like, all right, but how do I fucking do this and also be there for my kid?
Oh, I mean,
how do you juggle that? If
you have another few hours,
mm-hmm.
I could maybe begin to tell you how much it fucks with my head.
Oh,
but it's bad. It's bad. I've really had to decide, like, do I want to be a present father or do I want to have this career where, because with what we do, if you're not putting your foot on the gas, somebody else is, and they deserve what happens, So I've kind of had to say, like, maybe I need to fade into the background a little bit more and pray that I can bring it back in a couple of years. Cause right now, like, dude, I'll leave to go on tour. And I'll go for like 3 days, 4 days max now. And I'll pull my kid aside. Oh, I'm going to the airport, buddy. And he'll just straight up go, don't leave again. He'll tell me to my face, don't leave. And I'm like, fuck, I'm fucking this kid up.
That shit making me tear up. I'm like, how the fuck you did that? Ain't even my kid, goddamn.
Dude, I once Skyped him while I was out on tour. And he wouldn't say hello.
Yeah.
And I was like, buddy, just come say hi. And he just goes, why? I'm never even going to see you again. And I was like, I gotta come off the road. I can't be on the road as much. Fuck. So it's been tough. It's been a mental struggle. But at the end of the day, it's not really a contest. I'm going to find ways to adjust my life to be around him more. But I've also had to take a deep breath and go, well, for a long time, I had my own space. Our friend Anthony DeVito, who's like one of my favorites.
I love Anthony, yeah.
He once said to me, he was like, for a long time in New York comedy, it was kind of like there's the club scene, there's the alt scene, there's whatever the fuck Gethard's up to now. That was its own kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've realized that kind of has had to go away. I don't necessarily have the energy to do that anymore. So
but I felt like you had a good team in place when you did the public access thing where you gave everybody their own show.
Oh, your episode was like probably my favorite one. It was the fucking best.
I appreciate that. Yo, thank you for that opportunity, man.
Dude, I hope that it's been a thing that has helped in any way.
No, it definitely helped. Good. It definitely helped, man. Do you ever see stuff like Jim Gaffigan? You know how Jim Gaffigan takes his whole family everywhere with him?
I can't imagine that.
What he got, like 9 kids?
That's crazy.
He got a lot. And they're like, I did one episode of Jim Gaffigan show. I think there was like a PA working with him. And they were like, he had like a tutor on site and all that shit. Like his kids were always with him.
Well, I don't make as much money as Jim Gaffigan, so I can't afford all that.
But, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I'd love to have you on again just to shoot the shit.
Dude, say the word anytime. Man. And I would also love to shoot the shit more in real life, too. So I hope we wind up at a show together in the green room sometime soon.
Yeah, fuck that. I'll just keep in contact. I'll just randomly text you.
Please. I need it.
All right.
I need it. All right, dude. You're the best.
Thank you, man.